Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that one man was so rich he could buy every private jet in the world, every luxury yacht, every sports team, and still have enough money left to change the global economy. Now imagine that man lived over 700 years ago. Not in Europe. Not in America. Not in China. He ruled in Africa. His name was Mansa Musa. Today, people argue over who is the richest person alive. Some say Elon Musk. Others mention Jeff Bezos or Bernard Arnault. But historians believe none of them come close to the wealth of one African emperor whose fortune was so enormous that modern economists struggle to calculate it. Some estimates suggest his wealth would exceed $400 billion in today's money. Others say even that number is far too small. The truth is, nobody knows. Because Mansa Musa owned something far more valuable than money. He controlled one of the world's greatest sources of gold. At a time when kingdoms rose and fell over precious metals, his empire produced so much gold that nearly half of the known world's supply passed through his lands. Kings dreamed of his friendship. Merchants crossed deadly deserts hoping to trade with him. Scholars traveled thousands of miles to seek his support. And when he finally left his kingdom on a single journey, he did something no ruler had ever done before. He gave away so much gold that entire economies collapsed. Prices changed. Markets crashed. Cities remembered his visit for decades. Imagine being so wealthy that simply walking through another country accidentally destroys its economy. It sounds impossible. Yet history says it really happened. But here's the question almost nobody asks. If Mansa Musa was the richest ruler who ever lived, why do so few people know his story? Why are schools around the world filled with lessons about medieval kings from Europe, while one of Africa's greatest emperors is barely mentioned? Who was this mysterious ruler? Where did his unimaginable wealth come from? And how did one African empire become the envy of the medieval world? The answers will completely change how you see African history. Because this isn't just the story of a wealthy king. It's the story of an empire that proved Africa was already home to powerful civilizations, thriving universities, global trade networks, breathtaking architecture, and extraordinary leadership long before many people realize. This is the story of ambition, faith, power, knowledge, and unimaginable riches. But every legend has a beginning. Long before the world knew the name Mansa Musa, there was another ruler whose decision would change history forever. The Mali Empire was already growing into one of Africa's greatest powers. Its lands stretched across fertile rivers, vast savannas, and endless deserts that connected West Africa to North Africa and the Middle East. For centuries, caravans loaded with salt, ivory, precious goods, and gold crossed the scorching Sahara Desert. These trade routes became the highways of the medieval world. And at the center of them stood Mali. Every caravan passing through brought wealth. Every successful trade made the empire stronger. Every year, Mali became richer than before. Yet nobody could have imagined what would happen next. According to one famous tradition, the emperor before Mansa Musa became obsessed with discovering what lay beyond the Atlantic Ocean. He reportedly assembled hundreds of ships, then thousands more, filled them with sailors, supplies, and hope, and ordered them to sail west. They disappeared. None returned. Instead of abandoning the dream, the emperor personally led another enormous fleet into the unknown. He vanished forever. His throne stood empty. The future of one of the richest empires on earth suddenly depended on the man left behind. That man was Mansa Musa. He had never expected to become emperor. He was simply the trusted deputy. But history had chosen him. The moment he placed the royal crown upon his head, everything changed. No one could have predicted that this quiet successor would become the wealthiest ruler the world had ever known. No one knew that his reign would transform Mali into the most famous kingdom on earth. And no one imagined that one incredible journey would make his name echo across continents for hundreds of years. Because Mansa Musa wasn't about to inherit history. He was about to create it. Coming up next. How did an African emperor build a fortune so vast that even today's billionaires would seem ordinary beside him? And what hidden treasures beneath the soil of Mali turned one kingdom into the richest empire on earth? The answer begins with gold, but not in the way you might expect. Part 2. The Gold Empire that made Mansa Musa unstoppable. The wealth no king could match. As Mansa Musa placed the royal crown upon his head, he inherited far more than a kingdom. He inherited the greatest treasure on earth. Not a palace. Not an army. Not even a mountain of gold. He inherited control over the very source of the world's wealth. In the 14th century, gold was more valuable than oil is today. Kingdoms fought wars to obtain it. Merchants crossed deadly deserts in search of it. Powerful rulers measured their strength by how much of it they possessed. And beneath the lands of the Mali Empire lay some of the richest gold fields ever discovered. The regions of Bambuk, Bure, and Galam produced astonishing amounts of gold. Every day, miners dug deep into the earth, uncovering golden nuggets that would eventually travel across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Historians believe that nearly half of the known world's gold came from West Africa during this period. That meant one thing. Whoever controlled Mali controlled the world's most valuable resource. And now that man was Mansa Musa. But gold alone does not create greatness. Many rulers have been blessed with riches. Few have known how to use them. Mansa Musa understood something that many kings never learned. True power comes from controlling trade, not simply collecting treasure. Instead of locking away his wealth, he transformed Mali into the center of international commerce. Thousands of camel caravans crossed the Sahara carrying gold north and returning with salt, fine cloth, books, horses, spices, and luxury goods. Imagine standing in the middle of the desert as a caravan stretches beyond the horizon. Thousands of camels. Hundreds of merchants. Each animal carrying valuable cargo. The journey was brutal. Blazing heat during the day. Freezing cold at night. Sandstorms could bury entire caravans. Bandits waited for careless travelers. Many never reached their destination. Yet they continued to come. Because the rewards were worth the risk. Every caravan entering Mali paid taxes. Every merchant increased the empire's wealth. Every successful trade strengthened Mansa Musa's influence. Soon, cities like Timbuktu and Gao became some of the busiest trading centers in the medieval world. People from different cultures met in these markets every day. Arabic traders negotiated with African merchants. Scholars exchanged ideas alongside businessmen. Gold changed hands beside books and rare manuscripts. This was far more than a marketplace. It was one of the world's great centers of civilization. Yet Mansa Musa wanted even more. He believed wealth should not only make an empire richer. It should make it stronger. He invested in roads that connected distant regions. He improved security for merchants traveling across dangerous routes. He strengthened local governors to maintain order throughout his vast empire. As trade expanded, so did prosperity. Farmers found new markets. Craftsmen sold their creations farther than ever before. Entire communities flourished under the stability of Mali. While many kingdoms grew powerful through conquest, Mansa Musa expanded his influence through commerce. His empire became a place where opportunity attracted people from across the known world. But there was another treasure flowing into Mali. One that could not be weighed in gold. Knowledge. Books became some of the empire's most prized possessions. In many cases, rare manuscripts were considered just as valuable as precious metals. Scholars, judges, architects, and teachers traveled to Mali because they knew learning was respected there. This was not the image many people have of medieval Africa. Yet the historical record tells a different story. Long before the modern age, West Africa was home to thriving cities, organized governments, international trade, and respected centers of education. Mansa Musa wanted the world to recognize that reality. He was no longer satisfied with being the richest king in Africa. He wanted the entire world to know the greatness of his empire. So he made a decision that would change history forever. In 1324, he announced that he would undertake the Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca. For most Muslims, it was a deeply spiritual journey. For Mansa Musa, it would become something far greater. He refused to travel like an ordinary king. Instead, he prepared one of the most magnificent royal expeditions the world had ever witnessed. Thousands of attendants. thousands of soldiers, servants, officials, scholars, merchants, and hundreds of camels, each loaded with enormous quantities of pure gold. No ruler had ever attempted anything on this scale. As news spread across Africa and the Middle East, people gathered along the roads just to catch a glimpse of the approaching caravan. They had never seen anything like it, and they never would again. But no one realized that this incredible journey was about to create one of the greatest economic shocks in medieval history. The gold Mansa Musa carried would not simply display his wealth. It would change the fortunes of entire cities, and leave historians talking about him more than 700 years later. In Part 3, the greatest royal journey in history begins. What happened when Mansa Musa entered Cairo with unimaginable riches? And how did one man's generosity accidentally shake the economy of an entire region? Part 3, the journey that shocked the world. When one king's wealth changed history forever. The year was 1324. Across the endless sands of the Sahara Desert, people began hearing unbelievable rumors. A king from West Africa was approaching, not with a small royal escort, not with a few wagons of treasure, but with a caravan so enormous that it looked like an entire city was moving across the desert. At first, many dismissed the stories. Surely they were exaggerated. No ruler could travel with thousands of people across one of the harshest deserts on earth. But then the caravan appeared, and every rumor turned out to be true. Leading the procession was Mansa Musa, Emperor of Mali. Behind him stretched an endless line of soldiers, royal officials, servants, scholars, merchants, musicians, and attendants. Historical accounts describe a procession of around 60,000 people. Imagine looking toward the horizon and seeing thousands upon thousands of travelers marching together beneath the burning African sun. The line seemed to have no end. Then came the camels. Dozens. Hundreds. Each carrying heavy bags filled with pure gold. Some historical sources suggest every camel transported over 100 kilograms of gold. Walking beside them were hundreds of servants dressed in fine silk, each carrying golden staffs that reflected the sunlight like fire. The entire caravan shimmered with unimaginable wealth. This was not simply a pilgrimage. It was the greatest display of royal power the medieval world had ever witnessed. As the caravan crossed the Sahara, villages emptied. People climbed rooftops. Merchants abandoned their shops. Children ran through the streets just to see the African emperor everyone was talking about. Many had never imagined that such wealth could exist. Others wondered if the stories were magic rather than reality. But Mansa Musa had not come to impress people with luxury alone. He believed wealth carried responsibility. Throughout the journey, he ordered gifts to be distributed to the poor. Travelers in need received food. Families struggling to survive received gold. Mosques received generous donations. Communities welcomed the emperor with admiration. Wherever he stopped, acts of generosity followed. To Mansa Musa, giving was an expression of both faith and leadership. Yet no one, not even the emperor himself, understood the economic consequences of what he was doing. Eventually, the magnificent caravan reached one of the greatest cities of the medieval world. At the time, Cairo stood among the richest and most influential cities on earth. Its markets overflowed with spices, silk, perfumes, jewelry, and rare treasures from across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Merchants spoke dozens of languages. Scholars debated in grand institutions. Powerful rulers watched over a city that connected continents. Then Mansa Musa arrived. The streets filled almost instantly. Crowds gathered from every direction. People pushed through marketplaces just to catch a glimpse of the mysterious emperor from Mali. Many expected another wealthy king. Instead, they witnessed something beyond imagination. His clothing was woven from the finest fabrics. His jewelry sparkled with gold. His attendants carried themselves with remarkable discipline. Even his guards wore elegant uniforms that reflected the prestige of the Mali Empire. Every detail announced one message. Africa possessed wealth beyond anything most of the world had imagined. According to historical accounts, Mansa Musa met with the Sultan of Egypt. Although royal protocol required visitors to bow before the Sultan, Musa reportedly hesitated, not from arrogance, but from religious conviction. He believed that ultimate submission belonged only to God. Eventually, diplomacy prevailed, and the meeting strengthened relations between the two powerful kingdoms. It was a moment of mutual respect between two great civilizations. But the true impact of Mansa Musa's visit happened outside the palace walls. As he explored Cairo, he purchased goods from local merchants. And he paid generously. Very generously. When beggars approached him, he gave them gold. When religious institutions requested support, he donated gold. When merchants sold him valuable items, he often paid far more than the asking price. Gold flowed through Cairo like water. At first, everyone celebrated. The city had never experienced such prosperity. Business boomed. Markets thrived. People believed fortune itself had arrived with the African emperor. Then something unexpected happened. Gold became too common. When an item that was once rare suddenly floods the market, its value falls. The same thing happened in Cairo. There was simply too much gold in circulation. Its purchasing power dropped dramatically. Prices changed. Merchants struggled to adjust. The economy was thrown into confusion. Modern economists call this inflation. According to several historical records, the economic effects lasted for years. Some historians estimate that Cairo's economy took more than a decade to fully recover. Think about that for a moment. One man's generosity affected an entire regional economy. Not because he invaded, not because he conquered, but because he gave away too much wealth. No billionaire in modern history has accidentally changed the value of money across multiple countries simply by being generous. That is the extraordinary scale of Mansa Musa's fortune. News of the African emperor spread rapidly across the Islamic world and into Europe. Travelers wrote about him. Merchants told incredible stories. Cartographers began marking Mali on their maps. For many Europeans, this was the first time they realized that beyond the Sahara lay a kingdom of astonishing wealth. The name Mansa Musa became legendary. His journey had achieved something no army ever could. It placed Mali at the center of the world's attention. But while the world admired his riches, Mansa Musa had another dream. He wanted his empire to be remembered not only for its gold, but for its wisdom. Because when he finally returned home, he would begin building a legacy that money alone could never buy. Coming up in Part 4. How did Mansa Musa transform Timbuktu into one of the greatest centers of learning on earth? Why did scholars travel thousands of miles to study in his empire? And why do many historians believe his greatest achievement was not his wealth, but the civilization he helped build? Part 4. The King Who Built Africa's Greatest City. Mansa Musa's greatest legacy was never his gold. When most people hear the name Mansa Musa, they think of gold. Mountains of gold. Caravans filled with gold. A king so wealthy that he accidentally disrupted the economy of an entire region. But if gold were the only thing he left behind, history might have forgotten him. Mansa Musa understood something that many rulers never did. Gold can make a kingdom rich, but knowledge can make it immortal. After completing his pilgrimage to Mecca, Mansa Musa returned to Mali with a new vision. He had seen some of the greatest cities of the medieval world. He had walked through magnificent mosques. He had met respected scholars, architects, judges, and teachers. He realized that true greatness was measured not only by wealth but by what a civilization could contribute to the world. So instead of spending his fortune on endless luxury, he invested in something far more powerful: education, architecture, faith, and the future of his people. One city would become the heart of that vision: Timbuktu. Today, many people have heard the name Timbuktu without knowing why it became famous. But in the 14th century, Timbuktu was becoming one of the most remarkable cities on earth. Located at the crossroads of major trade routes, it attracted merchants from North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Gold arrived from the south. Salt came from the Sahara. Silks, spices, books, and ideas flowed into the city from every direction. Under Mansa Musa's rule, Timbuktu was transformed into something far greater than a trading center. It became a city of learning. He invited the finest scholars from Egypt, Morocco, and across the Islamic world to settle in Mali. He welcomed mathematicians, astronomers, historians, poets, religious scholars, legal experts, architects. They did not come because they were forced. They came because Mali had become a place where knowledge was respected and generously supported. Mansa Musa believed that every great empire needed more than soldiers. It needed educated people who could guide future generations. One of his greatest achievements was expanding the famous Sankore University, which grew into one of the world's leading centers of higher learning. Thousands of students studied there. Some traveled for months across deserts just for the opportunity to learn from its scholars. Imagine that. Centuries before many of Europe's most famous universities reached their peak, students were traveling across Africa to study in Timbuktu. Its libraries became legendary. Shelves filled with handwritten manuscripts covered subjects ranging from astronomy and medicine to mathematics, law, philosophy, geography, and literature. Books were treasured possessions. In some cases, a rare manuscript was considered more valuable than gold itself. Families proudly passed books from one generation to the next. Scholars copied texts by hand, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have disappeared forever. The wealth of Mali was no longer measured only in precious metal. It was measured in ideas. And those ideas attracted the brightest minds of the age. Mansa Musa also commissioned the construction of magnificent mosques that still stand today as symbols of African history and architecture. Among the most famous was the Jingareber Mosque, designed by the renowned Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. Built using traditional West African techniques, it became one of Timbuktu's greatest landmarks. Its towering mud brick walls were not simply beautiful. They represented the confidence of a civilization determined to leave its mark on history. Every building, every school, every library, every marketplace reflected the vision of a ruler who believed prosperity should benefit an entire society. Under his leadership, Mali became one of the safest and most prosperous empires of its time. Trade flourished. Agriculture expanded. Justice strengthened public trust. Travelers described the empire as remarkably stable. Many reported that merchants could travel long distances without fearing robbery. For the people of Mali, this stability created opportunity. Farmers sold their harvests. Artisans developed new crafts. Families built better lives. Communities grew stronger. Mansa Musa's reign proved that wealth alone does not create greatness. Wise leadership does. Yet while his empire reached extraordinary heights, success brought new challenges. Maintaining such a vast kingdom required capable leaders. Trade routes had to remain secure. Regional governors had to stay loyal. And the immense riches of Mali attracted the attention of ambitious rivals beyond its borders. History has shown that every great empire eventually faces a difficult question. Can its greatness survive after its greatest ruler is gone? Mansa Musa could build schools. He could build cities. He could build one of the richest empires the world had ever seen. But he could not live forever. As the years passed, the future of Mali would depend on those who followed him. Would they protect the extraordinary legacy he had created? Or would one of history's greatest civilizations slowly begin to fade? The answer is both inspiring and heartbreaking. Because although Mansa Musa's empire would never again reach the same incredible heights, his influence would continue to echo across centuries. And today, more than 700 years later, historians are still uncovering the remarkable story of the African emperor who changed the world's understanding of wealth, knowledge, and leadership. Coming up in the final chapter, what happened after Mansa Musa's death? Why did one of the richest empires in history begin to decline? And why is his extraordinary legacy finally receiving the global recognition it has always deserved? Final chapter, the immortal legacy of Mansa Musa. The African king the world can never forget. Every great empire reaches a moment when history asks a difficult question. What happens after the greatest leader is gone? For the Mali Empire, that question arrived with the passing of Mansa Musa. For nearly a quarter of a century, he had transformed his kingdom into one of the richest, safest, and most respected empires on Earth. Its markets connected continents. Its scholars attracted students from thousands of miles away. Its cities became symbols of learning and prosperity. And its gold was known across the medieval world. But even the greatest rulers cannot stop time. Around 1337, Mansa Musa died. The empire he left behind was stronger than ever. Yet maintaining such greatness would prove far more difficult than creating it. His successors inherited immense wealth, vast territories, and international influence. But they did not all possess his vision. Gradually, cracks began to appear. Regional governors became more independent. Power struggles weakened the central government. Trade routes that had once brought endless prosperity became harder to protect. Neighboring kingdoms saw an opportunity. Slowly, the empire that had amazed the world began to lose its dominance. This was not a sudden collapse. It happened over generations. One ruler, one mistake, one lost province at a time. Eventually, new powers emerged across West Africa. The mighty Songhai Empire rose to prominence, taking control of many of the trade routes that had once belonged to Mali. The balance of power shifted. The empire that had once stood at the center of global commerce slowly faded from its former glory. But here's the remarkable truth. Even as Mali declined, the legend of Mansa Musa continued to grow. Travelers carried stories of his unbelievable wealth across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Merchants repeated tales of the emperor who traveled with mountains of gold. Scholars wrote about his generosity. Diplomats spoke of the powerful African ruler whose kingdom rivaled the greatest civilizations of the age. His reputation became so extraordinary that European mapmakers began drawing him on their maps. One of the most famous examples is the Catalan Atlas of 1375. There, Mansa Musa appears seated on a magnificent throne. In one hand he holds a golden scepter. In the other, a large piece of shining gold. To medieval Europeans, this image represented something almost unimaginable. An African emperor whose wealth seemed beyond calculation. Think about what that means. More than 650 years ago, cartographers believed that no map of the known world was complete without showing the ruler of Mali. His fame had crossed deserts, crossed seas, crossed continents. Yet somehow, over the centuries, much of the world forgot his story. History books often focused on kings and emperors from Europe and Asia. Meanwhile, one of Africa's greatest rulers received only a few paragraphs, or sometimes none at all. But history has a way of correcting itself. Today, historians are rediscovering the incredible achievements of African civilizations. Archaeologists continue uncovering evidence of sophisticated cities, international trade networks, magnificent architecture, and centers of learning that flourished centuries before the modern era. And at the heart of that story stands Mansa Musa. Not simply because he was wealthy, but because he proved what visionary leadership can achieve. He showed that prosperity is strongest when it is shared, that education can become a nation's greatest treasure, that faith, justice, and knowledge can build a civilization that inspires the world. His true legacy was never measured by the weight of his gold. Gold can be stolen. Gold can be spent. Gold can disappear. Knowledge cannot. The schools he supported shaped generations of scholars. The mosques he built still stand today. The manuscripts preserved in Timbuktu continue to teach historians about one of humanity's greatest civilizations. His influence survived the fall of his empire. It survived the passing of centuries. And now it reaches us. When people compare modern billionaires like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Bernard Arnault, they often ask who is the richest person alive. But perhaps the better question is this: can wealth alone make someone truly great? Mansa Musa gives us the answer. His riches made headlines. His wisdom made history. That is why, more than 7 centuries later, the world still remembers his name. Not as the man who owned the most gold, but as the king who transformed an empire into a beacon of knowledge, culture, and opportunity. Perhaps the greatest lesson Mansa Musa left behind is this: A leader's greatest achievement is not the fortune they accumulate. It is the future they create for others. And in that respect, Mansa Musa remains one of the greatest rulers the world has ever known. Outro and call to action. History is full of incredible African leaders whose stories deserve to be told, but many remain unknown to millions of people around the world. If you enjoyed discovering the remarkable story of Mansa Musa, make sure to subscribe because this channel is dedicated to bringing Africa's greatest empires, legendary kings, fearless queens, and forgotten warriors back into the spotlight. Which African ruler should we explore next? Was Mansa Musa truly the richest person in history, or do you think another legendary ruler deserves that title? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next journey into Africa's extraordinary past. Until next time, keep exploring history, because the greatest stories are often the ones the world almost forgot.